Hello, my dear students. A very warm welcome to all of you in Shri Jayendra Rank Zone. I am your friend and mentor for the subject Business Economics. In this lecture, we'll continue with Chapter 3, that is Theory of Production and Cost, and in particular, we'll begin with Unit 1, that is Theory of Production. All the concepts will be covered in the coming series of lecture. This is the second lecture for the unit Theory of Production. Let us continue. The third factor of production is capital. So basically, capital is that part of wealth of an individual or community which is used for further production of wealth, or we can say that which yields an income. The examples of capital could be plant and machinery, tools, accessories, factories, dam, canals, equipments, anything. So let us read the text first. We may define capital as a part of wealth of an individual or community which is used for further production of wealth. In fact, capital is a stock concept. It could be stored which yield a particular income which is a flow concept. It is necessary to understand the difference between a capital and wealth. Whereas wealth refers to all those goods and human qualities which are useful in production and which can be possessed on for value. Only a part of these goods and services which could be characterized as capital, because if these resources are lying idle, they could constitute wealth but not capital. So you can say that wealth refers to all goods and human qualities which are useful in production and which can be passed on for a value. Capital refers to only that part of the wealth that is used for further production. I believe all of you must have understood. Just write one more point. Resources lying idle will constitute what? Constitute wealth, but not capital. I hope you understood the capital versus wealth in a very particular, very clear sense. Let's continue. So, capital has been rightly defined as produced means of production or man-made instructions of production. In another word, you can say that capital refers to all man-made goods that are used for further production of wealth. This definition distinguishes capital from both labor and land, because both land and labor are not produced factor. They are primary or original factors of production, but capital is not a primary or original factor. It is a produced factor of production. It has been produced by men by working with nature. Machine, tools and equipments, factories, dams, canals, transport equipments are some of the examples of capital. All of them are produced by men to help in the production of further goods. So you can say that capital is a produced factor. Capital is a produced factor of production. Just write over here that capital is considered as produced means of production, and land and labor, which are considered as primary or original factor of production. Land and labor are primary factor of production. Just write capital is mobile and can flow from one use to another. One country to another, but with some restrictions, subject to certain restrictions. Let's see the type of capital. The first type of capital is known as fixed capital. So what is fixed capital? Basically, it exists in durable shape and renders a series of services over a period of time. The example of fixed capital could be machine, tools, etc. Circulating capital is another form of capital which performs its functions in production in a single use and not available for further use. Circulating capital, example, seed, fuel, raw material. It's a single use capital. The third is real capital. So basically it refers to physical goods such as buildings, plant, machinery, etc. Human capital. It refers to human skills and ability. They are called human capital because a good deal of investment has gone into creation of these abilities in humans. Tangible capital, which could be seen. So it could be perceived by sense, whereas intangible capital is in the form of certain rights and benefits. Intellectual property rights, benefits which cannot be perceived by senses. For example, patent, goodwill, patent rights, etc. So basically, tangible capital could be perceived by senses and intangible capital could not be perceived by senses. You can add the example of goodwill over here. Individual capital. So individual capital is personal property owned by an individual or a group of individuals. What is social capital? So it belongs to society as a whole in the form of roads, bridges, dams, etc. Let us see the meaning of capital formation. What is capital formation? So capital formation means a sustained increase in the stock of real capital in the country. You can say that the production of more capital goods like plant and machinery, equipment, accessory, which are used for further production of good is known as capital formation. The capital formation could also be known as investment. Let's move ahead. The need of capital formation. So basically we can say that the capital formation is required for replacement and renovation. if you want to replace an asset, if you want to renovate your factory, and that is why it is capital formation. So replacement and renovation of existing machinery and equipment are basically increasing the efficiency of production efforts and creating some additional production capacity in the society or in the factory. That is expansion of output of consumer goods in the future. This is basically capital formation. Just read the text over here. The need of capital formation or investment is realized not merely for replacement and renovation, but also for creating additional productive production capacity. So both the needs should be taken into account. In order to accumulate capital goods, some current consumptions has to be sacrificed and savings of current income are to be made. Savings are also to be channelized into productive investment. The greater the extent the people are willing to abstain from present consumption, the greater the extent of savings and investment that society will devote to new capital formation. You can say it that over here, if a society consumes all what it products and saves nothing, the future production capacity of the economy will fall when the present capital equipment wears out. In other words, if the whole of the present capacity is used to produce consumer goods and no new capital goods are made, production of consumer goods in the future will greatly decline. It is prudent to cut down some of the present consumption and direct part of it to making capital goods such as tools, equipments, machines, transport facilities, plant and equipment, etc. Higher rate of capital formation will enhance production and production capacity, increase the efficacy of production efforts, accelerated economic growth, and opportunities for investment. Just write it over here. Capital formation is required for replacement and renovation of existing machinery and equipments. That is increasing the efficiency of production efforts and creating additional production capacity. That is expansion of output of consumer goods in the future. Okay. Stages of capital formation. The first stage is savings. The first stage is savings. The basic factor on which the formation of capital depends upon is ability to save. The ability to save depends upon the income of an individual. If the income of an individual will be less, in that case, he will be able to satisfy his necessities and he won't be able to save a lot. Higher incomes are generally followed by higher savings. This is because with an increase in income, the propensity to consume comes down and propensity to save increases. This is true. This is true not only for an individual but also as an economy as a whole. A rich country has greater ability to save and thereby can get richer quickly compared to the poor country which has no ability to save and therefore has a limited capacity for growth of national income given the capital output ratio. So you can say that willingness to save depends upon willingness to save depends upon individual's income, individual's income, individual's concern about his future, and social setup in which the individual lives. If willingness to save is higher, the level of voluntary savings will be automatically higher. Okay, let us continue. So it is not only the ability to save but also the willingness to save. It counts a deal. Willingness to save depends upon individual concerns about his future as well as the social setup in which he lives. If an individual is far-sighted and wants to make the future secure, he will save more. Otherwise, moreover, the government can enforce compulsory savings on employed people by making Provident Fund, Public Provident Fund or PPF, Employee Provident Fund. It is a compulsion. Government can also encourage savings by allowing tax deductions on income saved. In recent years, business community savings and government savings are also becoming more important. Let's understand the mobilization of saving now. What is mobilization of saving? It is not enough that people save money. The saved money should also enter into circulation and facilitate the process of capital formation. Availability of appropriate financial products and institutions is a necessary perception of mobilization of savings. There should be a widespread network of banking and other financial institutions to collect public saving and take into prospective investors. In this process, the state has a very important and positive role to play both in generating savings and through various fiscal and monetary incentives and in channelizing the saving towards priority need of the community so that there is not only capital generation but also socially beneficial type of capital formation is possible. So you can say that over here, the saved money should enter into circulation through a well-recognized networks of banks, financial institutions, capital markets, etc. Just write it over here. The saved money should enter into circulation through well-organized network of banks, financial institutions, capital markets, regulatory bodies, etc. to collect public savings and take them to prospective investors. Okay. Third, investment. The process of capital formation gets completed only when the real savings get converted into real capital assets. An economy should have an entrepreneurial class which is prepared to bear the risk of business and invest savings in productive avenues so as to create new capital assets. You can write it over here. A positive environment in which investment is given initiative. Example, economic and industrial policies, capital market regulations, schemes of subsidies in certain situations, etc. Inducement to invest, which in turn which in turn depends upon the prospective rate of profit in the economy, the rate of interest, the next is entrepreneur. So basically, entrepreneur is a person who combines the various factors of production, land, labor, and capital, these three factors of production in such a way, in the right proportion, and initiates the process of production and bears all the risk involved in it. Just write along with me. Entrepreneur is a person who combines the various factors of production in the right proportion initiates the process of production and bears the risk involved. Just read the text now. So having explained the three main factors majorly, land, labor and capital, now the turn to the description of fourth factor of production, and namely that is an entrepreneur. It is not enough to say that the production is a function of land, labor or capital. There must be some factor which mobilizes other factors also, which combines them into the right proportion and initiates the process of production and bears all the risk involved in it. This factor is known as entrepreneur. He has also been called an organizer of the factor of production, the manager or the risk taker. But in these days, the specialization and separation of ownership and management, the task performed by manager or organization have become different from that of an entrepreneur. While organization and management involve decision making of routine and non-routine types, the task of an entrepreneur is to initiate production work and bears all the risk involved in it. I believe you understood. You can write here enterprise function. Enterprise function gives directions to the usage of other factors of production. That is land, labor and capital by themselves will not lead to production activity. Will not lead to production activity. What is the reward for entrepreneurship? The reward for entrepreneurship is profit. Profit is the reward for entrepreneurship. Let's continue and see the functions of an entrepreneur. Functions of an entrepreneur. The first function is initiating business enterprise and resources coordination. This is the very first function. An entrepreneur senses the business opportunities, conceives project ideas, and decides the scale of production. We can say that products and processes and build up owns the managers is his own enterprise. The first and foremost function of manager entrepreneur is to initiate a business enterprise, to start a business enterprise. So basically we can say that an entrepreneur has to collect the other factors of production, that is land, labor, capital, and to bring coordination between them, because he is the one who is initiating and running the business. He has to pay a fixed contractual remuneration to all the factors of production. He pays rent for land, you can say he pays wages for labor and interest for capital. If there any surplus is there after meeting all the fixed cost and variable cost, he accuses to the entrepreneurs, and the reward for this effort is risk taking. What is the reward? It is known as profits. But an entrepreneur also needs to face sometimes losses. So it's not that at every point of time an entrepreneur were in profits only. Other factor of production get their payment at a very fixed rate, irrespective of the fact whether entrepreneur is having profits or entrepreneur is making losses. So you can write it over here. Profit oblique loss can be faced by entrepreneur as the reward is variable. As the reward is variable. Let's see point number 2. Risk bearing or uncertainty of bearing. The ultimate responsibility for the success and survival of business lies with the entrepreneur. What is planned and anticipated by the entrepreneur may not come true, and actual course of event may differ from what is had anticipated and planned. The final responsibility for the success of survival of a business lies with the entrepreneur. Continue. The economy is a dynamic and changes occur every day. The demand for the commodity, the cost structure, fashion, taste, preferences, government policy regarding taxation, credit, interest rate may change over a period of time. All these changes bring about the changes in the cost and demand conditions were not anticipated by the entrepreneur. Thus, the entrepreneur has to bear these financial risks. You can write it over here. The final responsibility for the success and survival of business lies with the entrepreneur. The role of the entrepreneur is to manage all the uncertainty and all the risk and yet earn profit. Okay? You can also write it over here. The entrepreneur has to access and bear different risks technological risk, financial risk, etc. And these risks cannot be insured and also sometimes called as uncertainties. What is planned and anticipated by the entrepreneur may not come true, and the actual course of events may differ from what is anticipated. And planned. In case of adverse changes, there may be losses to the firm many a times. I believe you understood the risk bearing and uncertainty bearing. Let's see the third part now, and that is innovations. Innovations. Entrepreneur is to introduce and bring about innovation on a continuous basis. It can't say that entrepreneur will behave in an innovative manner. He'll try to do innovation once in a while. So it's a continuous process. According to Schumpeter, the true function of entrepreneur is to introduce innovation. Innovations refers to commercial application of new idea or invention to a better fulfillment of business requirement. Innovations is a very broad sense include the introduction of new and improved product, devices and under production process. Utilization of new or improved sources of raw material, adaptation of new and improved technology could be termed as innovation. Novel business model, extending sales of unexplored market, etc. According to Schumpeter, the task of entrepreneur is to continuously introduce new innovations. Continuously introduce new innovations. These innovations may bring in greater efficiency and competitiveness in a business and bringing in profits to the innovator. A successful innovator will be imitated by others in due course of time. Therefore, an innovation may yield profits of an entrepreneur for the shorter time, but when it is widely adopted by others, the profit tend to disappear. The entrepreneur promote economic growth of the country by introducing new innovations from time to time and contributing to technological process. But innovations involve risk and only a fewer individuals in the society are capable of introducing new innovations. It's a continuous process. An entrepreneur needs to keep on introducing new innovations. The greater the innovating ability, the greater the supply of entrepreneur in the economy, the greater will be the rate of technological process. So you can write it over here. Innovations may consist of number one, introduction of a new or improved product. Number two, introduction of new or improved production methods. Next, utilization of new or improved sources of raw materials. Opening up new or improved markets, etc. Okay, so students will keep this class till here only. Today we have discussed about capital. We have discussed about type of capital. We have discussed about the capital formation, stages of capital formation process. So basically there were three stages: creation of savings, mobilization of savings, and at last investment of savings into the real capital. We'll continue further from here. Thank you.